If you're a ball python, I keep looking over there, I gotta stop. That's where the tank is. Good morning, Reptilians. Welcome and welcome back to the channel. I'm Elle and this is Elle's Reptiles. This week we are doing a video that is basically a how to set up your ball python's tank. As you know, there are many ways to set up any reptile tank. So in this video, we're just gonna go through multiple options for doing that for a ball python. I did this a while back with leopard geckos and you guys seem to really like that video. So that's what we're going to do today with ball pythons. Before we get started, this video is sponsored by CustomCages. CustomCages was so nice to help me out in getting one of these tanks. That is where my ball pythons are currently staying, is in a CustomCages tank. So thank you so much to CustomCages for sponsoring this video. Let's get started. Okay, so first things first, let's talk about the enclosure. The size of the enclosure here varies greatly. Ball pythons will use space available to them. So minimum for a baby is gonna be about a 20-gallon long. Obviously, if it's like a little hatchling, it can be a little smaller than that. If it is more into the juvenile size, it can be bigger than that. It can always be bigger. And then as they get older, you're going to want to increase that size to give them more room. Reptiles suggest at least a 4-foot tank for adult ball pythons. For a very long time, ball pythons were just kept in racks. A lot of ball pythons are still kept in racks. Please give them space. They will use it. They will enjoy it. They like to stretch out and move. In this video, I have my ball pythons in a 6-foot enclosure and they have been using every bit of it. The easiest, quickest, simplest way to go is obviously just going to be a glass tank with a screen lid. Those are sold at any pet store. Other than just the glass tank, ball pythons do like a little bit higher of a humidity. So I would personally suggest going PVC if at all possible. A lot of people will also do Sterilite bins, especially when the snakes are smaller, because those will hold humidity. Just make sure if you're going to use something like that, you put ventilation in it. Stagnant air is not good for any reptile. Wooden tanks are a possibility as long as they are properly sealed, because again, they do like a little bit higher of a humidity. But you have so many different options. You can build them yourself. You can buy them pre-made. Prior to this tank, Sterling was in a 3-foot vision cage, and that one was super cool. It was good at holding in humidity. Before that, he was in a glass aquarium. And CustomCages, the sponsor of this video, makes a bunch of different PVC tanks and custom tanks for ball pythons in all different sizes, and they sell the stuff to go in those cages as well. So definitely make sure to check them out if you're in the market for a new ball python enclosure. There are a lot of different options here. As always, there are a lot of different options for heating that tank. Super important part of any reptile enclosure. I'm not listing these heating options in any specific order, just as they come to me. So the first option is going to be heat pads or heat mats. If you are using these, make sure that you are using a thermostat. Heat pads and heat mats do not internally regulate their temperatures and they can get way too hot for a ball python. Heat pads and heat mats are going to give your ball python belly heat. If your ball python likes to hide a lot, putting a heat pad under that warm hide is not a bad idea. The biggest downfall to heat pads though is that they are not going to provide a proper temperature gradient for your animal. So yes, your animal can go and lay on that heat pad, get warm, then go to their cool side and it's fine. But ambient temperature wise, that's not going to work out as well because heat pads are not strong enough to affect the entire ambient temperature. My current personal favorite, the one that I am currently using, is deep heat projectors. Arcadia's deep heat projector is absolutely fantastic. It creates a very wide area of warmth and heat. It helps the ambient temperature. It gives off IRA and IRB heat for your animal, which basically is the same heat that the sun gives off. I've personally noticed that my ball pythons love deep heat projectors and they come out and they bask and they hang out in the heat. So absolutely love that option. They are a little bit more pricey, but the animals love them. The next option, basking bulbs. This is the most common option for heating any sort of reptiles tank is basking bulbs. They are available anywhere and everywhere. This one you just play around with a dimmer switch if at all possible, or you can play around with wattage sizes to best heat that tank. It's very self-explanatory. They'll come out and bask and get warm, and it also heats up that ambient temperature. And then we have ceramic heat emitters. Ceramic heat emitters are cool because they put off no light, but they do put off heat, so you can use them day and night. Please don't use any kind of lights in your ball python's tank at night. no blue lights, no red lights, no lights, all the lights off at night. But the ceramic heat emitter is good for that, and it's also good if you need supplemental heat. So if you use a heat pad and a ceramic heat emitter on some sort of dimmable switch, it is going to give you a good ambient temperature. There are also radiant heat panels. I have never used a radiant heat panel, but they always looked like they worked really well. But if that is something you're interested in, definitely look into that. A lot of times they are kind of just built directly into the enclosure. As you can see, there's a lot of options there. There's probably some that I completely missed as well. Don't use heat rocks, but there's a lot of options there. Just make sure that your ball python is able to get warm. As for lighting, your ball python needs some sort of light in order to be able to regulate day and night, to differentiate between day and night. They need day and night cycles like all living creatures. Almost all living creatures. I'm sure there's some that don't need it. I don't know. If you are using a basking bulb, that's fine. You're turning it on the day, you're turning it off at night. Or your other option here is UVB. UVB lights are not 100% necessary for your ball python to survive, but they are beneficial. I have UVB lights on both of my ball python tanks, and they seem to like it. They come out in the daytime. Sterling's always out. He's very personable. It has been shown to be beneficial in digestion and activity levels, so that is definitely a possibility, and that is a light that you can just throw on there and turn on in the day, off at night, give them that day-night cycle, and also be giving them that vitamin D benefit. And if your tank still isn't quite bright enough, you can also just put LED lights on there, just white LED lights. They are pretty bright. They will definitely be able to light up your tanks, and they're super inexpensive. On to substrates. Ball pythons are going to need substrate because they will actually burrow if given the opportunity, and they also are going to benefit from substrate because they need a higher humidity, and a lot of substrates give higher humidity. Please do not put your ball python on aspen. Aspen is made to go into dry environments. If aspen is kept wet for too long, it can become mildewy or moldy. We don't want that. As I'm looking it up, the current weather in the ball python's natural habitat is just rain. There's so much rain, 89% chance of rain, 94% chance of rain, 79% chance of rain. There's a lot of rain going on there. Their humidity where they are from is usually pretty high. So you want to make sure that their substrate can support that in a healthy manner. There's a lot of different options here. You can do organic topsoils, cocoa fiber, coconut bark, repti chip, cypress mulch, even though I personally don't recommend that. It is very splintery. It is very stabby. You can mix sphagnum moss in there. You can do a mixture of a whole bunch of stuff. You can do repti soil and topsoil and a little bit of sand for drainage. Just make sure that it is a nice fluffy soil that they can burrow into, but that also holds humidity. Onto hides. Your ball python is going to very much appreciate having multiple different hiding areas. This not only gives them a place to go if they are feeling unsafe or insecure, but it also gives them a place to go to get away from the light, because ball pythons are not diurnal animals. They are not animals that necessarily want to be out in the light all the time. So giving them a place to get away from that is very helpful for their well-being. You can do this multiple different ways. You can do this by buying pre-made hides. You can create hides using rocks and wood and plants. You can do it however you want. Just make sure that they have multiple hides, and you want to have at least 2 hides in that tank, one on their hot side, one on their cool side. The more the better, but make sure they have at least 2. Having a water bowl is also very important. Ball pythons can and will drink water all the time. So make sure that you are giving them fresh water, and make sure their water bowl is pretty big and pretty sturdy. They do like to burrow, they like to slither all around, they like to knock stuff over and crush things, so make sure that the water bowl that you are giving them isn't going to topple over and flood their tank. And if you can make sure that the water bowl is as low as possible so that they don't get under it and potentially crush themselves if it's a very heavy water bowl, that is super cool too. It would also be super cool if that water bowl was big enough that they could kind of get in and out of it, because when they are shedding and they're looking for humidity, a lot of times they will use that water bowl to soak and to help get some of that shed off. And the last thing we're going to talk about is enrichment. Environmental enrichment for any reptile is very important. You do not want to just put your ball python into an empty enclosure with absolutely nothing to do. Animals need brain stimulation. So in order to do that, it's super easy. Just buy a whole bunch of fake plants, and you already should have your hides in there. You can buy or find and properly sanitize wood, vines, or cork bark. You can do a bioactive setup. You can put real plants plants in there. I did a bioactive for Sterling and put real plants directly into soil. It was an awful idea. He crushed all of them in the first couple days. If you're gonna put real plants, your snake will very much appreciate it, but I suggest just leaving them in the pots they came in. Take out the soil that comes in that pot, replace it with just organic topsoil, cocoa fiber, or whatever is appropriate for that plant. Stick it in there in the pot and it will do so much better than planting it directly in the soil. But all of those things are going to make your snake happier. With this setup, that enrichment in that tank now looks like digging area because you have a loose substrate. There are hides, there are plants and sticks, and you can even do certain kinds of rocks. You just want them to have things to do and things to slither over and slither under and just things to do. As long as if your tank isn't bare, you're probably good to go on enrichment. But that is it. You now have a ball python's tank that is all set up and good for your ball python. Let me know down in the comments below what your favorite thing in your ball python's tank is, or just tips and tricks that you have learned in setting up your ball python's tank. Huge thank you again to CustomCages for sponsoring this video and helping me out in getting this giant combo enclosure for my ball pythons. I am still absolutely in love with these tanks. So thank you so much, CustomCages, for sponsoring this video. As always, if you have not already, please feel free to follow me on my socials and like, subscribe, and hit that bell for notifications every single time I put out a new video, which is every Sunday and some Wednesdays. This week's Instagram shout out is here, and this week's subscribe shout out is here. Thank you so much for liking and subscribing and following and sharing and commenting and all that jazz. You are the bee's knees. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a fantastic day. Bye. Tank. As you know, there are so many different. That's what we're going to do today with this ball python. That's what we're going today. You can, and if you need more light, and if your tank still isn't quite bright enough, and if your tank is very helpful for them in their well-being. There's a gnat. As a